Brilliant. I think we'll make a start. Welcome everyone to our session exploring the well-being policy impact assessment for a regenerative and distributive future. I'm Xiaoting. I'm the government and policy lead at Donor Economics Action Lab, and I'll be your host today. Please also introduce yourself via the chat box to everyone. Thanks for those of you who already done so. And just a kind reminder that this session will be recorded. And if you have any tech questions, please do put it in the chat box. And we have Viva Tech support with us today who can help you troubleshoot. We also have 4 amazing speakers with us today. You can find out more about them by clicking their picture under the session description on the virtual platform of the Global Donor Day. I will also post their short bio into our chat box later as they speak. We will start with Margaret today, who will share 5 overarching considerations for policy impact assessment through a well-being economy lens. And she will also share some exciting news about the new policy design training course. We will then learn from practical examples from Sacha in New Zealand, Latu in Bhutan, and Natalie in France. Their rich experience will hopefully provide you all with some inspiration to further reflect and explore together how more holistic policy impact assessment can help make our national and local policy more conducive for ecologically regenerative and socially distributive economies. While you listen to our speakers, please feel free to share your insights, experiences, and reflections in the chat box with everyone. I know that we have lots of people joining us from all over the world, and many of you may also have similar experiences on how you do policy impact assessment or your engagement with local or national government authorities. So we really want to hear from you. What's your insight, what your experiences as well? And if you have any questions for the speakers, please post them in the Q&A box, not to the chat box, please. Because once you ask those questions in the Q&A, others can also like them and upvote them, and I would encourage you to all do so. We will have about probably 15 minutes for the speakers to respond to your questions during today's session. And as your host, I will try to be as democratic as possible and pick those top voted questions first. So make sure your vote count and post your question in the Q&A so others can also see and upvote your question. And how to improve the policy assessment is such a big and important topic. And we know it's going to be challenging to capture all the rich experiences from the speakers and you in just 90 minutes. So we have also prepared a my robot for you. Leah will help me post that into the chat box. And for those who are watching this as a video recording, this is also an invitation for you to also explore there. This is mainly for you all to engage after the session. This mural board includes additional resources, including video links that can complement what you will learn today during the session. We also invite you to share experiences and reflections with other participants via the mural board. This board will be kept open for you all to use, so you can all kind of continue the conversation and hopefully build more meaningful connections beyond this short 90 minutes together. And you can connect with those who are here with us live today, but also hopefully lots of people who will be watching this back when they wake up in other time zones. So without further delay, I will hand over to Margaret.
Yes, thank you so much, Xiaoting. And it's so wonderful to be here today, this morning. My name is Margaret Freeling. I'm a knowledge co-lead at the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. And I've had the great pleasure to work with Xiaoting as well as our speakers today on the development of an online course on well-being economy policy design. It's great to be able to now announce that it's been launched. It's been launched last Monday. We're here at in Rome at the OECD Wellbeing Forum. And it's now available on wellbeingeconomycourse.org. And for today's session, we're zooming in on one of the modules in this course, which is about well-being economy policy impact assessments. And so I'll give you a brief overview of what the course is about, and then just a little introduction into Module 9 before then handing over to our amazing speakers. Throughout my presentation, I'll be using the terms well-being economy and donut economics interchangeably. They're really about the same thing, about creating an economy that is in service of life. So the course that we've developed, I will share my screen. There we go. The course that we've developed, as I mentioned, you can find it at wellbeingeconomycourse.org. It's been developed by the Wellbeing Economy Alliance in collaboration with Donut Economics Action Lab and the Institute for Future Fit Economies with support from Partners for a New Economy. And there are 9, it's an online course that policymakers can work through at their own pace. So it's an asynchronous course. And it's a free resource. It's aimed at a global audience of policymakers, whether you're working at a local, regional, national, or international level of government. And it goes all the way from the foundations of donut economics and a well-being economy, of what is a well-being economy, why is this transition towards a well-being economy and donut economics so important, all the way through to the different ways in which governments are implementing these new approaches into their government practices. So module 4 looks at how to build a narrative for donut economics and a well-being economy, how to have those constructive conversations and find common ground, how to respond to some of the common concerns that we often hear about this shift, like, don't we need economic growth to be able to fund our welfare states, or is a well-being economy or donut economics bad for business? It isn't. But so in module 4, we're helping to build that narrative and the different ways into this conversation, and to be able to respond to these questions based on evidence. Then in module 5, we got into co-creating a well-being economy vision. So how to work with community and societal stakeholders to create that shared vision and ambition for what we want our economies to achieve. Module 6 then features all the different ways in which we can measure well-being, both qualitatively as well as quantitatively, and the different ways in which this can be done. Then there's a module about how to build a well-being economy movement, how to connect pioneers together, and how to really, jointly work towards this change process. And of course, all of the donut coalitions and hubs that are coming up around the world. Yesterday at the OECD Forum, Kate showed this amazing picture of all of the different hubs that are popping up in places around the world, which is just so inspiring and so much to learn from them in terms of how to build this movement. Then in module 8, we zoom in on how to build capacity. Of course, this is also a new way of working within government. So how to build that capacity within government to think in more holistic and system-driven ways. And how to strengthen accountability for well-being. And then module 9, which we'll be focusing on today, is about well-being policy impact assessments. So a fairly complete package. We've tried to design this course in a very interactive and engaging way. We know policymakers are very busy, so I've tried to make this as engaging as possible. So you'll find throughout the course, you'll find lots of video contributions from the most amazing thought leaders in this field. And I'm so pleased that 3 of them are with us here today to share their story from their locality. And also, so in addition to these videos, we're working with different activities so that people can start to relate the concepts that are being introduced throughout this course to their local context, and can reflect on how that works within their context. There are deep dive cards that allow you to go deeper into a certain topic without disrupting the overall course flow. So yeah, to explore certain topics more in depth. Share your thought cards that lead to discussion boards where you can reflect on how this relates to your context, but can also learn from other people how this works in their context. And of course, there's so much in this space that we can learn from each other. And then throughout the course, there are so many different case study examples of how this is working at local, regional, and national levels of government, hoping to inspire and equip people with all of this experience that is now being built up. So module 9 is about well-being policy impact assessments, and it's really about how we assess the impacts of our policies, not just on our intended outcome alone, but also on that web of interrelated outcomes that surround us. And policy impact assessments can, of course, occur before a policy is being implemented. It also happens afterwards in the form of evaluation. But in this module, we zoom in on the policy impact assessments, the prospective ex-ante policy impact assessments that happen before a policy or program is being implemented to help inform more robust policy design. Now, I'll only be able to give you a very brief overview, so I'll stick to the sort of high-level overview of this module. So in this module, we're looking at 5 considerations for policy impact assessment from a well-being economy lens. And we're looking at 5 main considerations in terms of looking at impacts on root causes. So some of these considerations, I think, are relatively common within government, or at least we're seeing increasing movement of governments starting to do this. Some are more new, and I think root causes is not necessarily systematically considered as part of the policy design process. So this is really about making more conscious decisions about, are we addressing issues upstream or downstream? Are we looking at treating the symptoms of the issues that we're facing, or are we really looking at addressing the root causes of the issues that are challenging us? And where along that river are we trying to intervene? Which is not to say that all policies will need to be fully upstream. I think especially in this transition, we will also still need downstream interventions to be able to deal with all of the harm that is there. But it's really about making more conscious decisions about where on that river we are intervening. And I know that Sasha McMicking will be speaking afterwards, will be able to speak to this much more profoundly in how they are doing that. And then section 2 of module 9 is looking at how to assess impacts on current well-being and well-being inequalities. So for each of these sections, we're showcasing practical ways in which governments are working with this. So this is about assessing impacts on current well-being more holistically, and also thinking about how it doesn't just impact the well-being of the population or of society or community overall, but how does this work for different groups in societies? Then the 3rd section of module 9 looks at how to assess impacts on future well-being, so future generations. There's some great examples there from Japan, for example, where they work with future design, and they split a group of policymakers into 2. One group looks at the policy from the now, another group looks at the policy from as if they were residents or citizens of 2060. And then they bring those 2 groups together, and they have an intergenerational conversation about what the impacts of the policies of the policy will be. And then the last section is about assessing impacts on well-being elsewhere. And I think that is also a lens that is not so systematically incorporated into policy assessments to date, and definitely something that we need more work on. And of course, the Donut Economics Toolkit and the Donut Unrolled tool is a fantastic tool to be able to not just look at impacts on well-being locally through both a social and an environmental lens, but also globally, and to think about our global responsibility and how we're impacting on global social well-being and global environmental outcomes. So I'll leave it at this for today. Do go and check it out on wellbeingeconomycourse.org, and very much looking forward to going into the real work that's happening on this, and how different governments are implementing these different lenses, as our next speakers will be able to speak to.
Thanks so much, Margaret. And I have posted the link to the course in the chat, so please do feel free to explore it and give us feedback. It's really, we're hoping to make it as practical as possible, so really appreciate any feedback on how we can make it more engaging and useful. And the whole course of essence is learning from practice. So now the next session is really looking at some of the practices on the ground and learning from practitioners. So I'll hand over to Sasha.
Thank you, Xiaoting, and it's fabulous to be at this wonderful event. Thank you so much to Donut Economics Action Lab and Wellbeing Economy Alliance for the invitation. I'm really grateful to talk about an Indigenous approach to shaping wellbeing policy, and want to acknowledge first the many hands that have contributed to this Indigenous approach. which is known as Hara Waiora, which means pathways to well-being. And many of those hands are no longer with us. Community leaders, Indigenous intellectual leaders, and want to acknowledge their generous contributions to shaping something which I think is significant because it's been adopted by the New Zealand Treasury. So we've got an Indigenous way of approaching wellbeing that is being used by a central agency, and that's something that perhaps some of our earlier generations would never have believed possible. So really grateful to be able to share it with you today. I think that important locating kind of the GPS of where does Hara Waiora sit in a landscape of really significant and valuable approaches to well-being. That we've got globally a common approach that likes describing the objective conditions in which well-being ought to or could exist. The OECD approach is really common. It's been adopted lots of places. Kind of got objective lists with metrics. Some places like Wales go a step further by creating a policy framework that's got directional aspects, will set goals that will lead us towards a future in which well-being can thrive more substantively. And some examples where there's a prescriptive approach to trying to ensure that well-being is delivered by providing really tight rules for how we might go about it. And recognizing the value of those approaches, Hara Waiora has a different stepping off point that I think it's helpful to talk to. It doesn't engage so much with objective descriptions for the conditions of well-being. Rather, what it tries to do is provide a normative reorientation about how we think, with flow-on effects for the nature, considerations, priorities, and processes that go into policy making. And want to acknowledge that in the development of Hara Waiora, some of our Indigenous intellectual leaders spent a long time talking about the significance and the resonance of donut economics. So it seems really fitting to have the opportunity to bring Hara Waiora back into this context, because donut economics was a really important catalyst point for Hara Waiora. And recognizing that connect, what I want to do is talk briefly to the normative, analytical scaffolding, procedural scaffolding components of Hara Waiora, which in combination, I think, make it a comprehensive, albeit inevitably evolving approach to well-being. Excuse me. The normative orientation of Hara Waiora is, I think, a permissive normatism. It says, here are the things that matter, but in the spirit of there are many pathways to well-being. It doesn't limit how those dimensions of well-being might be experienced. And what it does is it has three central layers of what we would call the constituents or the component parts of well-being. For well-being to be enjoyed, first there needs to be wairua, which could be translated, albeit incompletely, as spirituality. So for well-being to exist, there must be some element of connection to something beyond the self, whether that is a cause or a spirituality or a religion, something that gives a sense of meaning is an anchoring point. The second is taiao, or the natural world, which is positioned in a non-human centric way. And then the fourth element is the human dimension. And there are four parts within that human dimension that we would say are significant for well-being to exist. The first, manatoko iho, is about having a cohesive identity. And I think this is where the non-prescriptive nature really comes to the fore. It doesn't say what kind of identity is good. it says that having an identity that enables you to make sense of life and the choices before you is critical to well-being. The second, mana tōtotu, is about having a sense of belonging to community, but framed in a way that belonging within community has the greatest strength for well-being when it's tied to a sense of responsibility. I know that I belong in a community because I am wholly seen and someone expects me to contribute in some way. Mana ahanga, which is about having hope and aspirations that guide the pursuit of capabilities. And mana whanake, about having resources so that the other aspects of well-being can be implemented. And I think in a policy context, what these dimensions of well-being within Kia ora Waiora do is they give us an alternative way of understanding public value. The whole purpose of policy should be to create public value, but sometimes we can be coy about describing what public value actually is. And I think Kia ora Waiора's first contribution is to provide this approach to public value. And there's lots of Indigenous models that would stop at that conceptualization point, but Kia ora Waiora tries to go further and to contribute thinking about how policy can engage with root causes or upstream, the upstream-downstream continuum. And it does this through a framework which was first contributed by the late Professor Manuka Henare. And he gave us a way from within our traditional knowledge and traditional laws of understanding the relationship between different spheres. And when it's extended into this context, what I believe Professor Manuka's work has done is given us a way of understanding the interrelationship between layers of well-being determinants. And I think one thing that often happens in policy discussions or debates is we get caught up in a debate about what is the determinant that matters most. And should we prioritize this determinant or that determinant? And in a context of incomplete evidence, we tend to go conservatively with that which is more familiar, rather than going more courageously into the less tangible upstream root cause dimensions. And I think this framework provides us a way of having a shared language about where in that upstream continuum we might be seeking to focus our efforts, and importantly, to think about the completeness of whatever policy solution we might be exploring. So the way this framework operates is at the downstream end, we've got āhuatanga, that which is most visible, can be seen. Retinga, the behavioural determinants. So either at individual or community level, what are the things that will shape behaviour? Going further upstream, we've got the tikanga elements, the structural determinants, which broadly would encompass the social determinants of health, which have a high degree of resonance with the very subjective list approach to wellbeing policy. And then at the most upstream point is what we would describe as the intrinsic quality of life determinants. So those are the wairoa, taiao, and human dimensions of wellbeing that I've just spoken to. And within our way of thinking, we can see the relevance of intervening at any of those points, but believe that the most transformational policy outcomes are going to come from having solutions which intersect with all of the determinants in a nuanced and related way. So if we took the example of poverty, for example, we quite often would focus our policy interventions on that which is visible. How much income is available within a household before or after housing costs? That's sound, that's important. A number of policy interventions might take us one step upstream to look at the behavioural influences on the capability of a household to manage finances and financial literacy and the like. Some incomplete policy interventions might engage with the nature of the labour market and those structural contributors that are embedded and challenging to address poverty, but very few policy interventions would take us into that higher level of the intrinsic elements. How is the level of hope and aspiration within a family shaping how they encounter structural determinants, their behaviours, and then those kind of lived realities? And what Kia ora Waiora asks is that we intentionally seek to build portfolio policy responses that are capable with dealing with all of those steps and determinants, well-being determinants, going further upstream into root causes. And we're really excited to have launched a whole suite of policy-making tools that we hope will help policy analysts and makers engage with this root cause-based way of analysing well-being determinants. And the link is available. It's available to anyone. These have only just been released. We are getting really positive feedback that they're increasing the rigour and courage of policy making, and I really hope that continues. Excuse me. The third aspect of Kia ora Waiora is that it also provides some procedural scaffolding. I think in our various spheres, we would all identify some imperfections in how policy is made, whether that's because we've got siloed governments or we've got invisible assumptions, or depending on which jurisdiction you might be, ministers who have predetermined the policy outcomes and intervention that they would like. So, and recognizing that there's a certain inevitability to the imperfection of anything humans touch. What Kia ora Waiora does is set out some process values for policy making that are based in our traditional knowledge and values and practices. Manaakitanga means hospitality. What it means in terms of the policy-making process is having enough knowledge of lived realities to be able to seek solutions that uplift human dignity. I think quite often policy-making is done with incomplete understanding of those lived realities. So there are some tools in the handbook for Kia ora Waiora that help deepen the understanding of lived realities. In common with many jurisdictions, there's an emphasis on collaboration with actors outside government. Tikanga is about challenging the assumption that the government is the best or inevitable decision maker. Kotahitanga is about overcoming fragmented and siloed government through having greater interagency cooperation. And the final one, tiakitanga, is about being able to look at the intergenerational horizon of policy outcomes and impacts. And there are a range of tools. I think the most incomplete of them is about that intergenerational benefits and burdens assessment, which I think many of us are engaged on currently. So with that combination of trying to reorient the nature of public value that drives the pursuit of well-being, the analytical scaffolding that goes into how we think about policy and how we identify root causes and how we test the potential efficacy of different policy levers for engaging with different determinants of well-being, and the process scaffolding. What we're trying to do with Kia ora Waiora is capture head, hand, and heart. And I think for any solution to achieve impact, it's really important that it engages with head, hand, and heart. And the ultimate purpose is to shift the dial on the complex, ingrained and pressing issues that we are all facing at this turbulent time. I think we are all united, wherever we might come from at this time. We are all united on trying to find the gateway to creating fundamental transformative change to those complex issues which are dearest to our heart. And Kia ora Waiora takes some license with the Einstein quote that a problem cannot be solved from within the same consciousness in which it was created. And what Kia ora Waiora hopes to contribute is that comprehensive way of thinking, acting, and believing differently to achieve different outcomes that our future generations deserve. So thank you so much for the time and opportunity to talk to Kia ora Waiora. I'm really grateful, and I hope that it has some points of resonance with the work that we're collectively engaged in. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sasha. And Sasha is staying up really late to stay with us. So really grateful for your wonderful contribution. Always remind me how powerful and transformative it is when we infuse Indigenous people's thinking and wisdom into the current dominant policy making and economic policy design. And thanks for encouraging us all to think differently and infuse different values in it. And one country that has never coiled from articulating and nurturing collective values through public policy making is Bhutan. And I'm really excited to also introduce the next speaker, Latu, who will also show us how Bhutan has put into the analytical procedural scaffolding to look at and evaluate policy differently. So over to you, Latu.
Thank you very much, Zating. Good afternoon, good morning, I think. Thank you, everyone. It gives me a great privilege, actually, to share what we, Bhutan, follow in our development path. I think it's basically many countries actually now acknowledge that GDP is only not the measure for people's progress and the country's economic development. So I'll be talking a little bit from the, basically an economic alternative development paradigm as opposed to gross domestic product. So gross national happiness is actually the development philosophy, a guiding philosophy for development in Bhutan since 1970s. So gross national happiness, actually, maybe, of course, I can share a little bit about, a minute about how it actually emerged. So His Majesty, the fourth King of Bhutan, has actually initiated this philosophy in 1980s when he traveled across the country and when he realized that the world at large are more or less overlooking over well-being and happiness of the people. So he felt that in this context, we should pursue a holistic approach to development that takes care of equitable socio-economic development. Can you all actually see my screen? Hello.
Not yet. We
Not
can't see
yet,
it.
Latu, sorry.
You can't see my screen?
No, we can't yet.
Oh, really? In fact, what happens? So I think I did actually the same way that we practiced. So, but then maybe. Can you see now? Still not?
Not
No.
yet. If you go back onto your Zoom window where you can see all of us and just press that little green share button.
Okay. This is something now again I'm just yeah.
Maybe Lee. Oh, great. We can see it
Clear?
now. Yeah, and if you go up to the slideshow, next to the picture, if you stay on slide, yeah, brilliant. Start from beginning.
So, okay,
Perfect, thank you.
sorry. Okay, so I think I share a little bit on how gross national happiness philosophy emerged in 1980s when His Majesty the Fourth King of Bhutan pronounced that gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. So at that time, he noted that many developed nations were overlooking the universal desire of their people to have happiness and peace in their lives. So this is a short story, and he pronounced that gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product, with the conviction that economic growth alone, as represented by the gross domestic product indicator, is an insufficient measure of progress, happiness, and well-being of the people at large. So this is His Majesty King in 19. He was crowned as the king at an early age of 17, when he was 17 years old. So he felt that at that time, whether it took 10 years to raise the per capita income and increase prosperity, it is not going to guarantee that happiness, which includes political stability, social harmony, and a Bhutanese culture and a way of life, have been actually achieved. So on this premise, and government officials have really worked out as to how to translate this philosophy, gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. How do we translate this into action? So in different contexts, our senior leaders have discussed and have gained a lot of international interest, and it has given a lot of challenges also at the same time as to how to translate this. So they came out with 4 pillars of gross national happiness, that is sustainable and equitable socio-economic development, preservation and promotion of environment, preservation and conservation of culture, and good governance. So within these 4 pillars reflect Bhutan's holistic approach to development, where economic progress is harmonized with environmental sustainability, cultural preservation, and strong governance. So governance actually underpins the effective implementation and integration of policies related to all 3 other pillars, ensuring that development is inclusive, allowing citizens to actively participate in the decision-making process that affect their lives, sustainable and effective of the people's needs and aspirations. So this actually very much translates into the regenerative economy and distributive economy that Donald is focusing. So it seeks to reverse environmental degradation. When Bhutan has actually committed to maintain carbon negative, and at the same time, Bhutan constitution mandates that Bhutan maintains 60% of forest of the area under forest cover. So which means we have to really protect protect biodiversity and prioritize ecological conservation as a foundation of long-term sustainability. So in order that these pillars and and the GNH philosophy and values and principles are taken care of, so it is the 4 pillars are also translated into 9 domains. So this includes living standards, ecological diversity and resilience, community vitality, good governance, cultural diversity and resilience, education, time use, health, and psychological well-being. So this, I think, and also it with these 9 domains, it has 33 indicators. Each domain having its own indicator to measure, how we take care of all these domains. For instance, if we are talking about living standards, how much an household possesses assets, whether it has got, what kind of housing they possess, and what is the household per capita income. So these are some of the things that Bhutan actually works on the development work. And this GNH index is used in the formulation and monitoring of recent 5-year plans, policies, and programs. So based on national, periodic national surveys, so we have developed, the GNH index facilitates actually the assessment of public policies, plans, and programs in enhancing well-being conditions across the 9 domains. So this, combined with other index indicating, the GNH index serves as a tool to evaluate development progress over time and to help steer decisions and activities along a GNH-oriented path. So when we conduct assessments and if we find a certain indicator deteriorating in a domain, it prompts public decision and policy corrections. So this is how actually GNH helps, the GNH index helps participation of our communities in the decision-making process. So I'll talk a little bit that one in a later slide. And the pursuit of happiness is also enshrined in our environment, that actually mandates the government and the state to promote those conditions that will enable the pursuit of gross national happiness. So this is something very important that government takes very seriously while forming plans and programs for the country and communities, and also for any organizations in Bhutan. And of course, I talk a little bit about one kind of an example, but if I share a little bit of one of the domains, for instance, community vitality. So this actually is a strength of social capital, where we try to measure relationships among Bhutanese people, and also that we see, how families keep their relationship and how it promotes their cohesion and bondness, and also how are they being, how do they perceive safety in their community. And in the communities in Bhutan, they share, the labors, while the neighbor doesn't probably have enough laborers. The other neighbors will actually come together and help, farming in whatever activities they are. So how much trust they have within them, and how much support and socialization that actually takes place within the community. So that is how we measure community vitality. And also the 4 pillars and all the 9 domains are practically used as a baseline and indicators for 5-year plans. And we also use this in the allocation of, resources and budgets in different districts and provinces. And while also framing this as a GNH policy screening tool, and also it is used as framework for assessing the performance of business enterprises, and also used as a framework for project impact studies, and also a GNH in education. So and of course, I think I talk a little bit about the GNH index, which measures and track progress of overall well-being and happiness, and also it promotes transparency and accountability, and wherever possible, it really prompts policy review when we find there's the negative impact of the GNH in the society. So guided by these 9 domains, so public policy formulations go through rigorous social, economic, environmental, and cultural impact assessments to minimize or mitigate any adverse effects of proposed policies in Bhutan's sustainable development trajectory. So all proposed policies in Bhutan are screened through GNH policy screening tools. And the screening tool has 5 steps. So it actually has to go through, it screens the government plans and policies, even the corporate sector, even the community development projects, and then this exercise takes place in 5 steps. So it's actually to assess and policies and projects that impact happiness, value, and proper, and also to ensure continuity of the GNH values and principles in the plans and projects, and also to approach, to promote holistic approach to development. And the screening process actually uses 26 criteria. And the main objective of screening process is to systematically assess the potential effects or proposed effects on the population by evaluating their impact on key determinants of gross national happiness. Actually, the goal is to approve policies and projects that enhance GNH and reject those negatively affecting its key determinants. So the screening process actually ensures that all relevant dimensions are considered during project formulation to support a holistic approach to programs. And the criteria serves as a checklist to identify areas where potential effects are unknown or typically neglected or overlooked. So we do all these students on at a 5-step level. So there will be a bilateral session between the proponent sector and the GNH department, and to discuss discuss the relevant, and also to discuss all these relevant GNH indicators. And the next is the participants individually screen the policy. And the third is the results are discussed and compiled in a meeting, and at least 15 stakeholders participate in the exercise. So with the involvement of general focal persons, environment representatives, and other key stakeholders. And in our process of forming plans and policies, we take to the communities. Communities have the major say in formulation of their plans and projects in their own community. We have our county or the local government committee or committee and their assembly, where they will meet every 2 years. Every 2 times in a year, and then they will involve all the community leaders in that discussion, and all the decisions and all whatever they require in their community plans and policy will be framed at that local level, and then that local level will try to compile all the plans and policies that has been the people have already made voice in that forum, and then that will be taken to the district level. District level will also try to study whether the local government and the local level or the county level, the committee, the plans and policies actually align with the GNH values and principles. So they'll also have all the local leaders and the government leaders at the district level discussing over their plans and policies of different communities and different local governments. And then only the plans and policies are forwarded to the central government. And then that's where central government also tries to study the determinants of GNH, whether plans have all these things taken place. So if I share all these 26, then it would actually take a lot of time. But this 26 criteria includes equity, economic security, material well-being, environmental conservation, social support, and more. So, of course, at the end, the final approving authority is with the cabinet. And whatever the plans and policy or whatever the projects that we want to set up in the community, we have to have community clearance. Community plays a major role in the decision-making process in Bhutan's development context. So, in fact, if we have to set up a project in a community, the government must call all the community, all the household, representatives in the meeting, and they, at least, there must be a majority agreeing to the project. And if there's no majority, the project will get rejected and the government cannot really pursue the development in that area. So then they have to relook as to what has happened and what actually, community has voiced had to be taken place, and then they'll go back again, then discuss again, and then if the community thinks that that is going to enhance their living standard and well-being, then of course they will of course agree to the whatever the project they have. So this addresses actually the systemic inequality. So in this form, we really need redesigning economic institutions to serve the common good, aligning closely with the social and economic pillars of GNH, actually, which we prioritize equitable socio-economic development and good governance. So this decentralized economic power ensures that opportunities for prosperity are accessible to all, and actually it reflects the GNH values, in reducing poverty, improving health, and providing equal access to education and resources for all Bhutanese citizens. So we have a very inclusive governance and participation. So it is very inclusive and participatory. And so that way, I think that we can really have to redesign as to how to empower our marginalized communities, support local economies, and ensure that voices from all levels of society are heard and valued. And at the same time, also how do we enhance our social safety net in the form of, in Bhutan, of course, it's being enhanced through social protection such as free healthcare, free education, community-based initiatives that benefits everyone, especially the marginalized. So this actually aligns with the distributive kind of economy that Donut actually is pursuing at the moment. I think that's what we are looking for. So in the words of our fifth king, so GNH is simply development with values. So in whatever the development or the activities that we pursue, it must have certain values in pursuing them. Not only that, we really focus on making money, material growth, and then try to cut down trees, forests, and then, we really do not leave anything for our future generations. So now we talk a lot about the climate changes, and if we are not able to control our pursuit of economic growth or economic growth in the name of, gross domestic product, so we might at the end probably not be able to really keep our ecosystem strong. And I think the forum like this, I feel will really encourage us to how to really, have our new approach or regenerative economy, or how do we really approach all these activities in pursuit of the well-being and the well-being of the well-being of humans, and as well as the nature, animals, all the living forms actually. So this is how Bhutan actually pursues the gross national happiness. And then we really need to think about how we redefine our development, how we reorganize our development approach. Is it always the wealth, or is it always that we have, and at certain point, I think we really have to transform or change our mindset in changing our approach to development. So in that form, I think what we really need to look is, how do we actually, really think deeply. So GNH actually, I feel should give that, which pursues, the GNH actually is like embodies the pursuit of contentment, and that is basically to knowing the difference between enough and more. So at some point, I think we really have to liberate our desire for more wants, and probably look into fostering collective happiness within the community. And it should prompt our individual leaders, scholars, business leaders to contemplate the purpose of life beyond mere accumulation of wealth and material positions. So I think that's my probably 20 minutes gone. Thank you so much for listening very patiently.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Latu. I always look at the Bhutan example as you remind us it's not only about having the national government have a very different vision and infuse really good values into the policy making and the national ambition, but also that procedure scaffoldings that have been put into place that really elevate local voices and have a participatory approach. And as you have also alluded to, this really need to be different ways of thinking at international level. I'm really glad to see more of the GNH approach has been discussed in various other countries. But it's not only the countries can lead the transformation. We have seen a lot of the city government, local governments taking the charge in driving the change, sometimes really against odds of unfavorable national policies. And we will be next hearing from one of those cities. And I'll hand over to Natalie to take us through the example and inspiration.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you very much. Latu, can you please stop sharing your screen so that I can share mine?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Just hold on.
Latu, I think you need to go back to the Zoom, your Zoom screen. If you go to your Zoom screen.
No, I think I did. Is it still there?
Yeah, still there. So if you go to the Zoom and then you can stop sharing, it should have a stop sharing button.
Ah, okay. I'm so sorry. I'm really poor in this. Yes, I
Thanks for
okay.
persevering with our technology. Thank you. Over to you, Natalie.
Thank you very much. So hi everyone. Thank you very much to DL team for hosting this great session. So I will be sharing with you a bit about what we are doing in Grenoble, as I'm the donut project manager of the city. So can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. It's been 2 years I'm working with the municipality of the city of Grenoble to downscale donut economics on different levels. But first of all, let me introduce Grenoble 2040. It's a political approach that was launched after the European Green Capital Award in 2022. And it provides a common framework relied on donut economics for reflection and action towards a more distributive and regenerative economy. It was voted in February 2022 by the City Council, and it aims of offering children born in 2022 the opportunity to celebrate their 18th birthday in an ecological, safe, and socially just city, and
I think we just lost Natalie.
yes, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Sorry again. So yes, this Grenoble 2040 approach is based on three strong pillars. First, linking social and environmental challenges. Secondly, reconciling reason and emotions. And third, connecting local and global scale. So first of all, let me just show you a little overview of what we've been doing. So first of all, I made a city data portrait to assess and have an idea of where we stand in terms of transitions relative to target viability objectives and sustainability thresholds. So it was made in 2022. Then I worked on the analysis of the strategical plans and strategies of the municipality, on donut mapping, visualization of the main transversal plans, such as the municipal health plan, which was interesting to see if the political plans and strategies are addressing actually the challenges that we focused on the data portrait, and also we had some citizen workshops all along the year with life-size donut exhibition made to allow participants and citizens to immerse themselves in the concept of donut economics and understand it from a sensitive approach based on their everyday life and experience. However, I will mainly focus today presentation on the tool I was asked to develop. So it's an environmental and social analysis grid to provide a multi-criteria analysis of the projects included in the pluriannual investment program of the municipality. So it's a qualitative impact analysis as a new decision-making tool for political and budgetary arbitration and prioritization of the projects still on study. As you can see on the screen, it is based on three environmental axes: climate change with energy transition included, biodiversity, ecosystems with also pollutions and soil sealing, etc. And the last one is resource management with all circularity, items, waste, inputs, outputs, etc. And the three other axes are on social responsibilities. The first of all is human health with the quality of life, food, sports, etc. It's a fundamental well-being pillar. Then you have the social cohesion. It's like social links, citizenship, inclusion, hospitality, education, culture. And the last one is about social justice with all the social welfare, equality, social equity. It's all about vulnerability, inequalities, etc. So these are the 6 main axes. And if we go deep further, every axis is divided into 3 sub-axes of analysis. And here you have the environmental axis. We will be looking at the environmental impacts of the implementation of the project. So it's the direct environmental impacts of the project on the very local area of implementation on one side, and on the other side we will be looking on a wider scale on the environmental impacts of the project on the territory. I will develop this after. It's the same regarding the social axis. We will be looking both at the project social impacts of the project on the staff and civil servant, and on the population, users, etc. So I made this grid with a double materiality approach, which means we will be looking both on an environmental and social impacts, both on the internal municipality scale and on the territorial impacts. And this is quite new for the city, as it's a way of double checking on the responsibility of the municipality as local stakeholders, but also on its own civil servants and impacts. To get a little more precise about the structure of the tool, I'm sorry, I think my screen is always, yes. So you have the axis of analysis and sub-axis of analysis. You have the example. So the axis will be, for example, climate change. Then you have the sub-axis fight against climate change, and every sub-axis is related to 2 impact criteria. Here it's the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, for example, and every impact criteria is related to a political or regulatory or sanitary objective. Here it's to reduce by 83% the GHG emissions by 2040 compared to 1990. So it's a an example of how it's the survey is structured. So it's 36 criteria survey, and for every project, the project manager has to go through the survey and choose the option that best corresponds to the project with the rating principle you can see on screen. So you have 7 options, 3 positive contribution to the achievement of the objective, and 3 negative contribution to the achievement of the objective. The 0 one is when you have a project that is out of the scope of the dimension considered. For example, health service won't have some inputs and outputs of materials, so it will score 0. And on the left side, right side of the screen, you have the donut visualization we are offering at the end of the analysis results process, to have an overview of the positive and negative impacts of the project regarding these 36 impact criteria. And so the grid is based on the political, strategical objectives of the city. Then the survey is taken among the services to assess the investment project impacts. And then the analysis result with this donut visualization is taken back, to the politicians, so that they can make their decision based on this analysis also, and not only on economical or political criteria. So just to give you some quick learnings, it was the first year we experimented it on 30 projects within the municipality. It has been a real opportunity for project managers to have a new checklist, we could say, for conceiving projects, following up them, and evaluating them afterwards to see whether the project is made as provisional, etc. Also, the fact that the double materiality and the double scale of working both with political and technical side of the municipality was really a new way of making impact assessment. So this was the 2 main big learnings. We still have some big challenges. The political decision-making process was at the end not relying as we wished on this analysis, but it's a process we are working more deeply, so that for the next exercise it will be a more important criteria in the political choice. And we also have another challenges, is that the projects that are not rated positively enough, they should go through a redirection process, so that the worst ratings can get better, and we can say, okay, this project can be done if you change this and this and this aspect, so that it's greener, if I can say, or more donut friendly. Last but not least, we don't have a real overview of the global impacts of our projects on a more wider scale. For example, on the global impacts on other territories or other population all over the world. So this is also one of our challenges. However, we decided for next year to extend the use of this tool to the functioning project and not only investment project, and also to develop some toolkit adapted to each municipality department issues, keeping the global framework of this grid, but making it an even more to get a more adapted, personalized tool for each department. So before concluding, in Grenoble, it's been 2 years we've been working with donut economics as a visualization tool, analysis tool. I just explained how we are trying to make it more as a decision-making, monitoring, evaluation tool. Also a bit of consultation tool with the population, but we still have, of course, lots of interrogation regarding this common reference framework regarding the political dimension, the need for to have this huge support, the fact that the work on data is still in progress, and we don't have all of the data we would need. We would need also the fact that we have some other, for example, ecological accountability experimentations, and we are still working on how to connect different approaches. So these are still some huge challenges. However, I would say that political and technical support are essential to fully embrace the fields of donut economics possibilities. And last but not least, I'm really glad to share with you that I will be publishing today a huge report on 2 years journey of downscaling donut economics to Grenoble. So you will have more information about all of the thematics and tools I've been presenting. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you again to DEAL team for this nice and great session. Have a nice Global Donut Day to everyone.
Thanks so much, Natalie. And it's so great to also have this very candid conversation about what actually some of the practical challenges when we translate all this great ambition into practice. And it's no actually easy task to look at all the dimensions that Margaret first laid out, the root causes, the current well-being, the well-being equality, the future well-being, and also the well-being elsewhere. So I have seen a lot of really useful questions also coming in around those challenges. So if I can just invite all the speakers back, I think we'll just tackle the first question that also got upvoted, but actually I'm going to reframe it so everyone can speak to it. It's mainly about, so this is all great examples of how we can do the policy impact assessment more holistically, looking at all the 5 dimensions of well-being. But they are also, as Margaret alluded to, probably isolated cases at the current dominant ways of thinking, where GDP is still dominating the public discourse and dominating policymaking. So how do you think, from your perspective, we can spread this type of practice more widely to different countries, especially those countries where the GDP thinking is still really deeply rooted in the society? I think maybe I'll start with Sasha, and then Latu, Natalie, and then go to Margaret to add any additional thoughts. Sasha, over to you.
I think what Hara Waiora has tried to do is help people imagine, because I'm not convinced that we've got a willingness gap anymore. I think there's a broad sentiment that wants to do this, and people are genuinely looking for tools that help. So to me, it's a capability rather than an appetite gap that we're trying to bridge. And the responses to that out of New Zealand government have just been enormously positive. People like these tools because they help them to achieve things that they want to but can't as of yet. And I'm sure there's lots of really similar sentiment globally.
Thanks so much, Sasha. Latu.
Thank you so much. That's such a great question. Yes, I think as Zedong, you mentioned, still the world is pursuing the growth of GDP, and not really. But then, of course, slowly it looks like leaders are also rethinking their approach, especially in terms of climate change. I think there are a lot of things happening and all over the world, and everybody talks about climate change, and that is kind of a good thing that we hear every day. But in promoting happiness and well-being, from my point of view, I think it's not actually impossible. But I think it's the right mindset of a leadership, and also that how we really now reorganize our thinking. But many of the countries wherever I went and gave talk on GNH, people felt that how do we implement GNH? But I was trying to say that you do not have to really follow our own principles, what we follow, but then at least we have to apply our GNH, see wherever applicable in the local context, in your own country's context, what things can be applied from our principles and 9 domains, which actually takes care of well-being and happiness, and where all these in plants and pollen measures, we have also the system of measuring, progress of happiness and well-being, and then that could be adopted in the context of their own country and the social, and in own small organization. For instance, GNH in business. So in a business, how do you want to really implement, for the time use? So everybody, I mean, is very busy. People don't have even to eat lunch. But how do we allocate that time at least to eat lunch? And how do we spend that 1 hour at least in an organization, where we don't have to buy a hamburger and run into the office or like to the other office? How would we organize? These are the small things actually possible, but it is the mindset. So I think that's actually the change of the mindset is, I mean, it's really a crucial, very important.
Natalie.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the municipality and the civil servant, I would say that the tools were adopted easily when we were doing some action training with the analysis grid. So we would organize some session with the project managers and just help them answering and understanding this new framework. And actually, even if sometimes they were not that happy at the beginning of the session, then they found it really interesting, because it's a way of opening the mindset and consideration of a project, not just considering the little scope of the project, but also including some other dimensions and issues that are so important also. And it's also the way that it made it transversal, to make people just talk to each other about some project they are working on. And on a more large scale, I would say that donut economics offers a new way of thinking, and everyone can connect to it, because it's dimensions we have in our everyday life, such as food, alimentation, etc., or some environmental process we can feel, climate change, etc., in the day-to-day also life. So I think it really can be adapted to every public, and it can, as a new framework, it's quite inspiring to say, okay, I can have a 360 overview of environmental and social issues. And I think this is one of the key of donut economics.
Thank you, Margaret. Have anything to add?
Yeah, just really briefly, I think that's also why these Global Donut Days are so incredibly important. To connect, I think often we hear that these are concepts and it's utopia and that it's not possible. And I think what's showing here today is that this is possible and it's actually happening. So thank you again for organizing these days and connecting all of these great, amazing people working on this in this space to show that this is actually possible.
Thanks all. I really like the encouragement for us to think, actually, there is quite a lot of appetite to change. And we also have know-how, and we are experimenting it. So how do we create that space for more experimentation and more engagement? I can see the question about how kind of civil servant can get engaged, and such. I think your example also helped to address some of it. There's actually quite excitement about taking it up. It's really about technical know-how and Natalie, as you mentioned, that the action learning, getting them to get together and look at practices and how they can exchange. And that may also promote more kind of civil servant uptake. But to know that there are many civil servants actually quite willing to act this way already. So just to say that I know that we haven't covered all the questions, and it's a really short 90 minutes. As I said, we would not expecting that we'll be able to cover all the great elements of all these rich case studies, but also your experiences. So I just want to extend the invitation for you also to navigate to the open space on the virtual platform. So if you go to the virtual platform, click open space, you can see a few tables there. There's a table called government and policy. You can go there as participants. Everyone you will be able to turn the video on. You can have a chat. Anything that you feel like you want to have some reflections together with the group, that's a really great space to do that. And we still have time between the keynote of Kate. And also, again, Leah, maybe can you post the Miro board in the chat again? That's a space we have created that summarizes some of the key resources for each of the case shared today. So you can look back on those resources, but we also have prompt questions for you to add your reflections, your experiences, and feel free to also leave your name and a contact. So you can also have a space to connect with other people who is here listening rather than speaking. But those people may also have really rich experiences. And as Natalie, Margaret, and everyone said that we really need a more community to share your experiences and then both challenges, the good things, and the exciting opportunities to propel us forward. And then last but not least, do try out the policy design course. And we have the link in the Miro board, but also we also have the link in the chat box, so we can post to you again. With that, and please do explore more exciting sessions on GDD online platform. I have many great sessions around policies, and Natalie will appear later this afternoon to talk more about Genovo's experiences. So if you want to find out more, do join those sessions and check out the platform. And I know I will be dialing in many of them today, so hopefully see all of you there. And with that, sorry about 1 minute running over, but hope you all enjoyed the session. We look forward to connecting with you at the open table or through the Miro board. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, all the speakers. Have a great Global Donor Day. Bye.
Thank you so much.